So what kind of man is this? What's his religion? He's a Jewish man. Now, what's he nailing up there in his doorway? Not a rain gauge. Oh, no, it's not a rain gauge. So have any of you ever saw one of these? Have any of you ever been to a home? Okay, so this is a mezuzah, all right? And when you walk into a Jewish home, you'll kiss your hand, and then you'll touch that mezuzah, and then you'll kiss your hand again, and then you can walk in, okay? Now, I always got this confused when I was in Israel. I could never remember if it was a medusa or a mezuzah. And it is a mezuzah. I finally got it. But medusa meant jellyfish. So I would ask them about their jellyfish. They'd have no idea what I was talking about. But this medusa, I said it again, this mezuzah, it has a scripture in it. And so what they have done is they have put literally a scripture on the post of their door, just like the verse we read, okay? Now, if I can do this, I'm going to give it a try. Let me bring the other back up. I should just be able to hit this. And then what do we do? Do one of you darken it? Do I go back? Okay. All right. Okay. So now that you've all seen the mezuzah, that will get you into your lesson. Did you notice the passage? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. What is it that we need to hear today? The message is personal. Did you notice it is hear, O Israel? I would to God that today that men and women could understand this passage more and more. It is personal. It is for all of us. We all need to hear that the Lord our God is one Lord. But we need to hear it. I don't think this message is getting out today. I don't think people are hearing the true message of God. I don't think that they're hearing the old gospel. I don't think they're presented with the Jesus that we read about in the Bible. You know, we mentioned this morning, if folks would just read the Bible more, I think they'd be fascinated because they find out that Jesus is nothing as they thought that he was. Jesus was a real person who came and preached the gospel. And the gospel was this, that the world had gotten so bad off that God himself had to come down and die to fix the problems that we had. The question is, how are we going to fix the problems that we have today? And all of us want to see the problems in America fixed. The problem is we cannot decide what problems need to be fixed. Today, as in the day of Isaiah, we see people who call evil good and good evil. The whole thing is topsy-turvy. And what are we to say to these people? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. How do we apply this? We read the next verse. God says, this is how you do this. This is how all of this works. He says in verse 5, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. You know, it's one thing to hear the word of the Lord. It's another thing to love it. And it's one thing to say you love something. It's another thing to really love it. How do you really love it? With all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. What does might mean? That's the things you can do. That's the power that you have, the limited power you have. Now, when you take the limited power you have and you put it into something you love, generally, the rewards are great, aren't they? If a fella has some talent and he decides to take up the fiddle and he puts all that he has in it, and Steve will tell you, we see folks like this. They get obsessed, and they eat and they sleep and they breathe the fiddle, right? And that's what makes a great fiddle player, because they love it, number one, but they put all their heart and their soul and all of their might into this one thing. And it's amazing to see what people can do, especially in this country. We have so many talented people that I run into all the time. That God says this, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. And he wants you not just to love him, but to love him with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might." That means prove it. Do something. And here's how he says to do that. Notice in verse 7. "Thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up." He says, teach the word to your children. And when are you supposed to teach them? Well, notice what we have heard, verse 6. "And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, the law of the Lord." David said, "My heart delighteth in the law of the Lord." In October, a year ago, there was a very tragic event that happened in Israel. A number of people were killed because of a terrorist attack. Do you realize the day that it happened, it was a holiday in Israel? Does anybody know what holiday it was? Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah. You ever celebrate that one? When I was in high school, I liked skipping days, and I tried to convince my principal I was Jewish and was going to take Yom Kippur off and things like this. And I had him believe in it until he called home and asked my mother. But Simchat Torah, I love this holiday because it's a holiday, Simchat, praise be the law. They celebrate the Bible. And it's very curious to watch them over there. They'll take a gigantic Torah scroll and they'll all dance out of the synagogue into the street, and they're carrying literally the Torah, the scroll, and they're dancing through the street. And all day long they're praising God in song and in dance for the Bible. Man, I wish people would get excited about the Bible that way. But they're praising God for the Bible. Now, it's curious to me. Why don't we put all of our heart and all of our soul and all of our might into the Bible more often? It's like a marriage. A woman went to a counselor and she said, I'm done with him. I'm done with him. And I'm here to let you know that we're divorcing, and I'm just going to bide my time. I've got the lawyer ready and everything's queued up, and I'm going to take him for everything he's got. And he said, all right, here's what you need to do. If you really want to get back at him, over the next couple weeks, go home and just pretend like you love him more than you ever have. I mean, when he gets home, tell him how glad you are to see him. You know, just do everything you can. Spend time with him. Go out and play with him. Do whatever. Just, this will really get him. Well, you know what happened? Before long, she realized, I do love him. And it wasn't him that was changing. It was her. Isn't that curious? In our society, we can pick out all the problems, and we can look to Washington and we can say, we need to vote them in so they'll change the problems, so they'll fix them, when really, maybe our perspective needs to be changed. I want to let you know something. When you're studying the Bible and you're praying for your country, your perspective is going to be different. You know, you might find people that you seem like I just can't stand that fella. I challenge you, go home and pray for him every night this week. When you're praying for somebody, it's hard to hate him. And I mean genuinely pray for him. James understands this concept. He was talking about being sweet and kind to people. He said it's like pouring hot coals on their head. Just love them to death. You ever tried that? I didn't say smothering to death, Flora. Okay? Love him to death. Love the Bible that way. It'll change your life. Notice, they were to teach them diligently every day in everything we do. Let's read it again. Teach your children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, when thou walkest by the way, when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. Now, let me ask you a question. When are your children sitting in the house? Sometime during the day, aren't they? Laura's reading to the girls every day now, and she's got, what is it called, stories from the Bible? Is that what it is? She's not happy theologically with them. She doesn't like their commentary on some of it. I said, just read the book to them, Laura. They just want to point at it and say, apple. That's all they want to do. But you see, when you're sitting around, teach your kids. Notice here, what did he say? And when they're walking by the way. Are you ever out walking and your kids are there with you? Teach them the word. Notice here, when thou liest down. When do they lie down? At night, right? And if you're in my house, sometimes I lie down during the day. Laura will tell Marley, you're going to lie down, or I'm going to put you down. All right? And remember this verse next time, Laura, but as you're putting Marley down, just go through a verse. All right? Children, obey your parents in the Lord. And look at the last one. When thou risest up. Now, what time of day are we talking about? Are you getting what he's saying? All day long. Talk to them about the word. Man, we've got to work diligently because the world is stealing our kids from us. Let me rephrase that. They don't want to just influence your kids. They want your kids now. And it's happening. It's happening every day. And so he says to do this. Verse 8, thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and thou shalt be as frontlets between thine eyes. I'll be done in just a moment, brother. Now, when you read that, what do you think of? Notice it again. Thou shalt bind for a sign upon thine hands. The idea is whatever you do with your hands. Jesus said, in all you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord. That makes sense, right? When the Jews read this, how did they interpret it? Literally, they took a box that is called a phylactery, and they run a leather strip on it. I remember I was standing at the Wailing Wall in Israel, and I looked Jewish, okay? And so I just get in this line, and I think they're handing out free phylacteries. So I just get in this line, and it's my turn to come up, and the guy starts praying over me, starts tying the phylactery in my head, and all of a sudden he looks into my eyes, and he says, are you Jewish? Like that? And I said, no. He said, what are you doing in line then? I said, well, I wanted one of these things. And he had a fit then. Just started yelling. The whole crowd started yelling at me. But what were those things? Well, they're a little box, and they have a scripture in it. And where do they put them? They bind them between the eyes, and they wrap them around the hands. Isn't that curious if that's how they interpreted it? Is that what Moses was telling his people to do? By the way, Jesus talked about those phylacteries. They had got to the point where the most righteous had longer strings. Look at my phylactery. All right? Look at this. If you keep going on, thou shalt write them upon the post of thy house and on thy gates. There's your mezuzah. In that little container is a scripture that, and by the way, they pay rabbis to write these scriptures so small that you can't even read them, so they can roll them up. All right, we used to do this when I was a kid, when we'd write a love letter to Jenny across the room. We'd write it so small and roll it up, and then we'd toss it over there, right? And it's just so small, and they never open it up and read that scripture. And when they go by, they kiss their hand and they touch it. They kiss their hand again, and look what they've done. They've obeyed this scripture, haven't they? Because they got their philacteries, they got their mezuzah, but they missed the whole point, and America has missed the point today. How many people do you know who own a Bible but have never opened it? And I'm telling you, open it. It's fascinating. Fascinating. And it isn't just the fascination quality of it, but it is life-changing. And it's what we need today. And what's so beautiful about the Jewish people in the time of Moses was that they were world changers. I want you to understand something that you may not get from this passage just by reading it. I don't know if you're aware of this, but they were to teach every child in their house, that's boy and girl, foreigner, slave. This is the only ancient civilization who taught both boys and girls and slaves to read. Nowhere else in the ancient civilizations. And Google it. Now, there were boys and girls who could read in the ancient civilization, but they were the higher classes. We're talking about the plowboy all the way to the prince. They were told by God to teach their children the law, and the way you teach it is to read it. And they learned to read. Isn't it any wonder that there's been so many brilliant and successful Jewish people down through the age? Because they have always been a literate society. But they changed the world because of the Bible. Shimkat Torah. They celebrate that Bible. They celebrate that heritage. America no longer celebrates the Bible, and they could care less about our heritage. It means nothing. How many people do you see who are trying to change the Constitution over and over again because they don't want to be tethered to some old-fashioned book, let alone a book this old? But folks, without this book, there'd be no Constitution. And without a Constitution like ours, we wouldn't be the country that we are. And folks, I don't think we're going to be the country that we've been in the past very much longer if we don't wake up. Well, I'm preaching a little too hard. What do we do with our young people? How do we change the world? You know, when I look out across this audience, I think we are so blessed. We've got kids everywhere. I mean, we're really growing this church one way or another, aren't we? But we owe it to these young people. We've got to introduce them to the Lord. Ruella, I didn't get to say hi to you this morning. How are you doing? It's good to have you back.
Thank you.
But you know, Ruella, someone asked her, how you doing? She said, I'm doing better because of your prayers. When I was younger, allow me to reminisce. I'm done now. The lesson will be yours. But when I was younger, I fell in love with the Lord and his church. And by the way, I was a rascal. I was ornery. And I thank the Lord that I had the church. I cannot tell you how many times I was down front. But they were always there for me. And you know why I came down front? Because I trusted them. And I cherished their prayers. Here's why. Because as we were going out the back every week, they weren't talking about fishing. They weren't talking about hunting. They certainly weren't talking about politics. Oh, I long for the day that we didn't talk about politics. They weren't talking about any of that. You know what they were saying? And I know exactly what they were saying because I was a young boy paying attention. They were back there in the foyer testifying to the faithfulness of God in their life that week. Like Rilla, they would say, God answered a prayer for me this week. Or God helped me this week. Or God sent somebody to me this week. Or God sent me somewhere this week. Now, none of them were having conversations with God. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about a charismatic, holiness, run the aisle, shout and glory congregation. I'm talking about people who realized that God worked in their life every day, and when they came to church, they were able to talk about it in those terms. They talked about God like he was a friend who was right there with them. And that changed my life, because they introduced me to Jesus, a Jesus who was real and who really was a friend, who they were able to walk with and talk with every day. Church, we need to get back to that kind of thing. I needed to hear you say that, Riella, this morning. Yes, God answers prayer. Don't you believe he's still answering prayer today? I do. And I pray about this congregation. I pray about you. I pray about this community. I pray about my family. Oh, I pray about my family. And I pray that he'll use me up in this venture to influence people and do what I need to do. But I pray that he draw me closer. And he says there's one way to do that. And folks, it's right here. Stay in the book and stay on your knees. Those are the two best places in the world to be. Won't you come as we stand and sing?